I'm Joshua Myers, 28 years old, and 15 years ago, my parents put my entire life into 2 black garbage bags and set them on the curb like I was trash day pickup. Last week, those same people walked into a boardroom on the 47th floor of a Seattle skyscraper, wearing rented suits and fake smiles, absolutely convinced they were about to inherit a fortune from the man who saved me. Before I tell you how I wiped those smiles off their faces permanently, let me know where you guys are watching from in the comments. I read every single one. To understand the look of absolute horror on my mother's face when the will was read, you have to understand the woman she is. Or rather, the woman she thinks she is. My mother, Sandra, always believed she was destined for a life of luxury that was unfairly stolen from her. And she believed my brother, Caleb, was the golden ticket to getting it back. I was just the extra luggage. Let's go back to 2010. Southeast Portland. We lived in a house that always smelled slightly of damp carpet and stale cigarette smoke. My father, Robert, worked at a hardware store and spent his evenings staring at the television, trying to make himself invisible. My mother managed the house, which mostly meant managing Caleb's schedule and managing to find new ways to tell me I was in the way. I was 13. Caleb was 15. And in the Myers household, that 2-year age gap might as well have been 2 different universes. Caleb was the high school quarterback. He was loud, charismatic, and had a smile that could get him out of a murder charge. He was also lazy, entitled, and not particularly bright. But to my mother, he was the golden child. She had a bumper sticker on her rusted minivan that said, "Proud Football Mom." There was no sticker for Proud Mathlete Mom. That's what I was. I was the kid who fixed the Wi-Fi. I was the kid who did my own laundry because if I threw it in with everyone else's, it somehow got lost. I was the kid who balanced the family checkbook at 12 years old because my parents couldn't figure out why they were overdrawn again. The inequality wasn't subtle. It was a sledgehammer. I remember my 13th birthday vividly. It was a Tuesday. I came downstairs hoping for maybe a pancake breakfast, or at least a happy birthday. The kitchen was empty. There was a note on the counter. "Joshua, make sure you take the trash out before school. Caleb needs the bathroom for his grooming routine. Don't hog it." That was it. I went to school, got straight A's on a math test, and came home. That night, after dinner, meatloaf that was mostly filler, my mom brought out a single cupcake. It was store-bought, dry, and had a single candle jammed into it. "Make a wish," she said, checking her watch. "And make it quick. Caleb has a rally in 20 minutes. I blew out the candle. I wished I was somewhere else. Anywhere else. "What did you get me?" I asked, trying not to sound pathetic, but failing. My dad looked up from his plate, shifting uncomfortably. He looked at Mom. "We put $50 in your college fund," Mom said, smoothing her skirt. "We can't be spending money on frivolities, Joshua. You know things are tight." A college fund. That mythical account they talked about, but I had never seen a statement for. "Okay," I said. "Thanks." 2 days later, it was Caleb's birthday. The house was transformed. Streamers, balloons, a catered barbecue in the backyard for the entire football team. But the kicker? The gift. I stood on the porch and watched my father drive up in a used, but decent, red Ford Mustang. It wasn't new, but it was a car. Caleb screamed like he'd won the lottery. He ran down the driveway, tackling my dad in a hug. My mom was beaming, tears in her eyes. "You deserve it, baby. You're going to be a star." I walked over to my mom. My chest felt tight, like someone was standing on it. "You said things were tight," I whispered. "You gave me a cupcake and a promise of $50. You bought him a car." Mom turned to me, her smile vanishing instantly. It was like a switch flipped. Her eyes went cold. "Don't be jealous, Joshua. It's unbecoming," she hissed, her voice low so the neighbors wouldn't hear. "Caleb needs a car for practice, for scouts, for his future. This is an investment in the family. When he makes the NFL, we all win." "He's a sophomore backup quarterback, Mom," I said, the logic spilling out before I could stop it. "He has a C- average. He's not going to the NFL." She grabbed my arm. Her nails dug in. "You listen to me," she said, her voice shaking with suppressed rage. Your brother shines. People like him. He has potential. You're good at details. You're good at adapting. You'll figure something out. You always do. But don't you ever try to dim his light just because you're standing in the shadow. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't just the second favorite. I was the insurance policy. I was the backup plan. I was the staff they kept around to keep the lights on while the star performed. I pulled my arm away and went to my room. I didn't cry. Crying was for kids who thought their parents cared. Instead, I opened my beat-up laptop, a hand-me-down from Caleb that crashed if I opened more than 3 tabs, and I started working. I had been teaching myself coding and high-level finance since I was 11. I frequented forums, read PDFs of college textbooks I pirated online. I knew that if I was going to survive this family, I needed an exit strategy. And that week I found it. It was a flyer for a prestigious STEM summer program at the University of Washington. Future innovators in finance and tech. It wasn't just a camp, it was a networking event. Top professors, recruiters from major tech firms. But the tuition was $4,200. It might as well have been $1 million. But there was a scholarship exam. 1 spot. Full ride. I spent the next 3 weeks sleeping 4 hours a night. I studied linear algebra while Caleb played video games. I wrote essays on market volatility while my parents planned Caleb's road to state parties. I poured every ounce of my frustration, my anger, and my intelligence into that application. I submitted it without telling a soul. Fast forward 2 months. It was a humid afternoon in July. The mail came. I sorted through the bills, final notice, overdue, second notice, and then I saw it. A thick envelope with the university seal. My hands shook as I tore it open in the driveway. Dear Mr. Myers, we are pleased to inform you that you have achieved the highest score in the tri-state area. I had done it. Full tuition. Room and board covered. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was the main character. I felt like I mattered. I ran inside, the letter crushed in my hand, a genuine smile on my face. Mom! Dad! I yelled. They were in the kitchen. The atmosphere was heavy. My dad was sitting with his head in his hands. My mom was pacing, a cigarette burning in the ashtray. Caleb was sitting at the table, looking sullen and annoyed, picking at his fingernails. I got it, I said, breathless. I got the scholarship, the STEM program in Seattle. It's worth $4,000, and I got it for free. Silence. No one cheered. No one looked up. Finally, Mom stopped pacing. She looked at me, and her eyes weren't filled with pride. They were calculating. Is it a check? She asked. What? The scholarship, she said, walking over and snatching the letter from my hand. She scanned it. Is it a check made out to you? Or do they pay the school directly? It pays for the program, I said, confused. Why? She tossed the letter onto the table like it was junk mail. Caleb is in trouble, Joshua. I looked at my brother. He didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. What did you do? I asked him. It wasn't my fault, Caleb grumbled. The guy stopped short. I barely tapped him. He rear-ended a parked car, Joshua, Dad said, his voice muffled by his hands. A Mercedes. And he was driving without insurance because I forgot to pay the premium last month. The guy wants $3,000 cash to keep the police out of it. Mom interrupted, her voice rising. If the police get involved, Caleb loses his license. If he loses his license, he can't get to practice. If he has a record, the scouts won't look at him. His future is over. Okay, I said slowly. So? Mom took a step closer to me. So we need money. Now. I don't have money, I said. I'm 13. You have this, she said, tapping the letter. Call them. Tell them you can't go. Tell them you have a family emergency. Ask if you can cash out the scholarship value. I stared at her. That's not how scholarships work, Mom. It's tuition, not cash. Then ask for a refund of the deposit or something, she snapped. I didn't pay a deposit. It's a merit scholarship. Then find a way, she screamed, slamming her hand on the table. You're the smart one, right? You're the genius? Figure it out. Get them to send you a check for travel expenses, supplies, anything. We need $3,000 by tomorrow. No, I said. The word hung in the air. Excuse me, Mom whispered. No, I repeated, my voice trembling but my feet planted. I earned this. This is my future. I am not going to call them and try to scam them for money to pay for Caleb's mistake. He wrecked the car. He should get a job. My mother looked at me like I had just slapped her. She took a deep breath, and her face settled into a mask of cold, hard resolve. You are a selfish, ungrateful little brat, she said quietly. After everything we've done for you, we put a roof over your head. We feed you. You do the bare minimum. I yelled back. You bought him a car and me a cupcake. I'm done sacrificing for him. If you can't sacrifice for this family, she said, pointing a finger in my face, then you are not part of this family. I didn't know it then, but she wasn't making a threat. She was making a promise. And that promise was about to change my life forever. The air in the kitchen was so thick with tension you could choke on it. My refusal hung between us, a physical barrier. My mother, Sandra, didn't blink. She didn't back down. She operated on a simple principle. She was the sun, and we were the planets. If a planet fell out of orbit, it was destroyed. You have 1 hour, she said, her voice eerily calm. 1 hour to fix this. Get on that phone, call the university, and find a way to get liquid cash out of that program. Or find another way to get us $3,000. Or what? I challenged, though my knees were shaking. Or you'll see, she said. She turned her back on me and went to comfort Caleb, who was now scrolling on his phone, completely unbothered by the fact that his brother was being extorted to clean up his mess. It's okay, baby. Mommy will fix it. Joshua will do the right thing. I stormed out of the kitchen. I went to my room and slammed the door. I grabbed my chair and wedged it under the doorknob, a habit I developed over the years to keep Caleb from borrowing my things. I sat on my bed, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I looked at the scholarship letter. It was beautiful. Cream-colored paper. Embossed logo. It represented everything they weren't. Merit, intelligence, fairness. I can't give this up, I thought. If I give this up, I die here. I become dead. I become a ghost in my own life. I didn't call the university. Instead, I called the one person my mother hated more than anyone. Uncle Anthony. Anthony was my father's older brother. He was the black sheep, but for the opposite reason I was. He was successful. Wildly successful. He lived in Seattle, ran a private equity firm, drove fast cars, and didn't apologize for any of it. He and my dad hadn't spoken in 6 years. My mom called him arrogant and greedy. I knew the truth. He refused to lend them money for their bad investments, so they cut him off. I had his number memorized from an old Christmas card I'd saved from the trash. I dialed. It rang 4 times. Myers. A deep voice answered. Direct. No fluff. Uncle Anthony? I whispered. It's Joshua. There was a pause. Joshua? Robert's kid. Yeah. Everything okay? Is everyone alive? Yeah. Everyone's alive, I said, my voice cracking. But I'm in trouble. Well, Caleb is, but they're making it my trouble. Talk to me, he said. I told him everything. The car wreck, the extortion, the scholarship, the ultimatum. I didn't cry. I kept it factual, just like I knew he would respect. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end. And you want the $3,000 to give to them? Anthony asked. His tone was disappointed. No, I said firmly. I don't want a dime for them. I want to know. If she kicks me out, can I go somewhere? Is there a shelter? I don't know what to do. She won't kick you out, kid. That's a bluff, Anthony said. But listen to me. Do not give up that scholarship. That is your ticket out. You hold the line. You hear me? Hold the line. I'm scared, I admitted. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. I'm gonna make a few calls. You sit tight. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. Okay. Joshua. Yeah. You're the smart one. Don't forget that. He hung up. I felt a tiny spark of hope. But hope is a dangerous thing in a toxic house. The hour passed. I heard footsteps thumping up the stairs. The doorknob jiggled. Then a fist pounded on the door. Joshua, open this door. It was Mom. I took a deep breath, moved the chair, and opened the door. She stood there, arms crossed. Dad was hovering behind her, looking like he wanted to dissolve into the wallpaper. Well? She asked. Did you get the money? No, I said. And I'm not going to. Her face turned a shade of red I'd never seen before. You selfish little parasite. After all the food we put in your mouth. I'm 13, I yelled back. I'm a child. It is your job to feed me. I don't owe you my future because you guys are bad with money. Caleb appeared in the hallway, eating a bag of chips. Just give her the money, nerd. Stop being dramatic. Something inside me snapped. Years of being pushed aside, of being mocked, of being less than. You're pathetic, Caleb. I spat. You're a loser who can't even drive a car without hitting something. And you need mommy to bail you out because you're too stupid to function. Caleb's face dropped. He dropped the chips. He charged at me. Caleb, no! Dad shouted, but it was too late. Caleb shoved me hard. I flew backward into my room, tripping over my rug. I crashed into my desk. My laptop. My precious, beat-up lifeline with all my code. All my work. Slid off the edge and smashed onto the hardwood floor. The screen shattered. The casing cracked. I lay on the floor, staring at the broken machine. It was like watching my heart break in real time. Caleb stood in the doorway, chest heaving. Oops, he sneered. Guess you don't need that scholarship now if you can't email them. I looked up at my mother. I waited for her to yell at him. I waited for her to check if I was hurt. She looked at the laptop, then at me, and she shrugged. That's what happens when you provoke people, Joshua, she said coldly. Violence creates violence. You brought this on yourself. The injustice of it hit me so hard I felt dizzy. She was blaming me. Caleb assaulted me, destroyed my property, and she was blaming me. I stood up. I was shaking, but not from fear anymore. From pure, white-hot rage. You are a monster, I said to her. My voice was quiet, deadly steady. You are a terrible mother and a terrible person. And I hate you. The slap came so fast I didn't see it. It sounded like a gunshot in the small room. My head snapped to the side. My cheek burned. Get out, she whispered. Sandra, wait, Dad started. I said get out, she screamed, her voice tearing at her throat. I am done. I am done with his disrespect. I am done with his selfishness. He is a cancer in this house. Get out, Joshua. Get out before I kill you. Fine, I said, tasting blood in my mouth. I'm going. And don't think you're taking anything we paid for, she hissed. The clothes on your back. That's it. I grabbed my school backpack. I shoved the shattered laptop inside. Maybe the hard drive was salvageable. I grabbed the scholarship letter. I grabbed a hoodie. Give me the keys to the house, she demanded. I took the key off my ring and threw it at her feet. Happily, I walked past them, past Caleb, who was smirking, past my dad, who wouldn't meet my eyes. I walked down the stairs and out the front door. I expected her to stop me. I expected Dad to run after me. But the door slammed shut behind me. Then I heard the deadbolt slide home. Click. I was outside. It was 8 p.m. The sun was setting, and the famous Pacific Northwest drizzle was starting to fall. I had no money, no phone. It was on the kitchen counter. No coat, just a broken laptop and a piece of paper that said I was smart. I walked to the curb and sat down on the wet concrete. I didn't know where to go. The nearest shelter was downtown, miles away. About 10 minutes later, the front door opened again. My heart leaped. Maybe they came to their senses. Dad walked out. He looked terrified. He was carrying 2 large black garbage bags. He walked down the driveway and dropped them next to me. Your mom. She packed your stuff, he mumbled. She said you're not welcome back inside. Dad, I said, looking up at him. You're letting her do this? I'm 13. He looked at the house, then back at me. His eyes were wet. She's really mad, Josh. You know how she gets. Just go stay with a friend for a few days. She'll cool down. She demanded $3,000 I don't have, and then Caleb broke my computer. I said, she's not going to cool down. This is it, isn't it? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled $20 bill. He tried to hand it to me. Take this. Get some food. I looked at the money. Then I looked at him. Keep it, I said. Put it in Caleb's college fund. Sounds like he's going to need bail money soon anyway. Dad flinched. He dropped the money on the wet ground, turned around, and walked back inside. The door locked again. I was alone. The rain started to fall harder, soaking through my t-shirt. I pulled the garbage bags closer to me, trying to shield them from the water. These bags contained my life. Old comics, some clothes, a few trophies from science fairs. Trash. I sat there for what felt like hours. The street lights flickered on. Neighbors peeked out from their blinds, saw the kids sitting on the curb with garbage bags, and closed their blinds again. No one came out. No one wanted to get involved with the crazy Myers family. I was cold. I was hungry, and for the first time I felt completely, utterly abandoned. Then I saw headlights. Not the yellow, dim headlights of the neighborhood sedans. These were bright, blue-white xenon lights. They cut through the rain like lasers. A low rumble shook the pavement. It wasn't the rattle of a broken muffler. It was the deep, guttural growl of a precision engine. Car turned onto our street. It was black, sleek, low to the ground. A Porsche 911 Turbo S. It looked like a spaceship that had landed in a trailer park. It slowed down in front of my house. The window rolled down. Get in, a voice said. It was Uncle Anthony. I stared at the Porsche. It was alien, beautiful, and terrifying. The passenger door swung open, and the interior light spilled out onto the wet pavement, warm, inviting leather and the soft glow of the dashboard instruments. Joshua, don't make me ask twice. It's raining and this is Italian leather, Uncle Anthony said. His voice was gruff, but there was a tightness in it I hadn't heard before. I grabbed the 2 garbage bags. I have stuff, I stammered. Trunks in the front. Pop it, he said. I fumbled with the latch, threw my soaking wet life into the front trunk of a $150,000 car, and climbed into the passenger seat. The heat was blasting. It smelled like cedar and expensive cologne. Anthony looked at me. He was a big man, broad-shouldered, with silver-gray hair and eyes that were sharper than broken glass. He wore a tailored suit, no tie. He looked at the red mark on my cheek where Mom had slapped me. His jaw muscle jumped. She hit you? He asked quietly. Yeah, I said, looking down at my wet sneakers ruining his floor mats. Stay here. Anthony turned off the engine. The silence was sudden and heavy. What? No, don't go in there. I panicked. She's crazy. She'll call the cops. Let her, Anthony said. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a long, legal-sized envelope. I'm not going in there to fight, Joshua. I'm going in there to buy something. He stepped out into the rain. He didn't run. He walked slowly, deliberately, up the driveway to the front door. He pounded on it. Not a knock, a command. The door opened. I saw my mother's silhouette. I saw her start to yell, her arms flailing. Then I saw Anthony step into the doorframe, towering over her. He didn't yell back. He just held up the envelope. They talked for a minute. Mom looked at the envelope. She looked back at Dad, who was hovering in the hallway. Then she stepped back and let Anthony in. The door closed. I sat in the car for 20 minutes. Felt like 20 years. I imagined them screaming. I imagined Anthony hitting Caleb. I imagined Mom calling the police and blaming me for everything. I looked at the dashboard. There was a stack of papers in the side pocket. I saw the words custody and relinquishment. I didn't understand what they meant. Not really. Finally, the door opened. Anthony walked out. He looked exactly the same as when he went in, calm, composed, unruffled. He got back into the car, started the engine, and put it in gear. "What happened?" I asked, my voice barely a squeak. "It's handled," he said. "What does that mean? Are they mad?" Anthony pulled the car away from the curb. He didn't look back at the house. "Joshua," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "You aren't going back there. Not tonight. Not next week. Never. But they're my parents." "Biologically, yes," Anthony said. He merged onto the highway, the Porsche accelerating with a force that pressed me back into the seat. "But biologically, a shark is a fish. Doesn't mean you should swim with it." He reached over to the back seat and grabbed the envelope he had taken inside. He tossed it into my lap. "Open it." I opened the envelope. Inside was a legal document. Voluntary relinquishment of parental rights. It was signed. Sandra Myers. Robert Myers. Dated today. And underneath the document was a carbon copy of a cashier's check. Made out to Sandra Myers. Amount, $15,000. I stared at the number. $15,000. You paid them?" I asked, feeling sick. "They had a price," Anthony said, his eyes fixed on the road. "Caleb needed $3,000 for his mess. Your mom wanted $10,000 for emotional distress and to cover some credit cards. Dad wanted $2,000 for, I don't know, beer money. I gave them 15. Round number." I felt tears stinging my eyes. Hot, angry tears. "They sold me?" I whispered. "For $15,000? "Yes," Anthony said. He didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't say, "No, they love you, it's complicated." He told me the truth. "They sold you, and it was the best deal I ever made." I looked at him, shocked. "What?" "I bought a future CEO, a brilliant mind, and a good kid for the price of a used Honda," Anthony said. He glanced at me, and for the first time he smiled. It wasn't a shark smile. It was a real one. "I ripped them off, Joshua. They have no idea what you're worth. But I do." That was the moment I broke. I started sobbing. Ugly, heaving sobs. I cried for the cupcake. I cried for the slap. I cried for the fact that my mother chose a check over her son. Anthony didn't tell me to stop. He didn't turn up the radio. He just reached over and put a heavy, warm hand on my shoulder. He squeezed tight. "Let it out," he said. "Grieve them. They're dead to you. Tonight you bury that life. Tomorrow we start building a new one." We drove 3 hours to Seattle. He took me to his penthouse. It was all glass and steel, overlooking the Puget Sound. It was cold, modern, and intimidating, but he showed me a room. "This is yours," he said. It had a bed bigger than my old room, a desk that looked like it belonged on a spaceship, and on the desk, a brand new MacBook Pro. The box was still sealed. "I heard you had some hardware issues," he said. "You'll need that for the STEM program." "You're sending me?" I asked. "I'm not sending you," he corrected. "You earned it. I'm just driving the bus." That night I didn't sleep. I lay in that massive bed, listening to the hum of the city. I realized something. My mother was right about one thing. She said I wasn't part of the family anymore. She was right. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was Anthony Myers' investment, and I was going to make sure I gave him a hell of a return. The next 15 years weren't a montage of happiness. They were a grind, a relentless, focused obsession with success. Anthony wasn't a hug-it-out kind of dad. He was a mentor. He was a general. He treated raising me like running a blue-chip company. "Emotions are fine, Joshua," he used to tell me over breakfast. "Always egg whites and spinach, 6 a.m. sharp. But they are poor decision-makers. Use logic, use leverage, and never, ever let them see you bleed." I took that to heart. I crushed the STEM program. I graduated high school as valedictorian. I got into Wharton for finance. Anthony paid for everything, but he kept a ledger. "This isn't charity," he reminded me when he paid my tuition. "This is a loan against future earnings. I expect you to run Myers Holdings one day. Don't disappoint me. I didn't. By 22, I was an analyst. By 25, I was a portfolio manager. By 28, I was the CFO of Myers Property Holdings, overseeing a portfolio worth nearly $30 million. I wore Italian suits. I drove an Audi R8. I spoke 3 languages. I became cold, efficient, dangerous in a boardroom. And the family? They tried. Oh, how they tried. It started in 2012. 2 years after I left. My mom emailed me. Subject, thinking of you. Joshua, hope you are well. We miss you. Caleb is having some trouble with the law again. Misunderstanding. And we are a bit short on the mortgage. Since you're living the high life, maybe you could help family? Love, Mom. I forwarded the email to Anthony. He printed it out, framed it, and hung it in my office. Motivation, he said. I never replied. In 2016, Caleb got married. I got an invitation. It was clearly a cash grab. The registry was full of items like honeymoon fund and $2,000 4K TV. I didn't go. I heard later from a cousin that Caleb was divorced 6 months later because he gambled away the wedding money. By 2024, I was untouchable. Or so I thought. But time is the one enemy you can't outnegotiate. Anthony's heart started to fail. It was genetic. He fought it with the same stubbornness he fought hostile takeovers, but in the end, the body keeps the score. February 2025. I was sitting by his hospital bed. The machines were beeping rhythmically. He looked small. The lion was tired. Joshua, he rasped. His grip on my hand was weak. I'm here, Anthony, I said. I never called him Dad, though he was the only father I ever had. He preferred Anthony. The will, he whispered. It's airtight. Andrew. He knows what to do. Don't talk about that, I said. I knew who it was. I picked up. Perfect, I said. He's desperate. At 9:55 a.m., the elevator doors opened. They walked in. It was like watching a slow-motion car crash. Sandra led the pack. There is a will, Mr. Harrington, Andrew said dryly. If you'd shut your mouth, I'd read it. Nathan sat back, smirking. Go ahead. We'll contest it anyway if it's not favorable. Undue influence. We know Joshua has been isolating Anthony for years. I almost laughed. Isolating? I was the only one who visited him. Andrew began to read. I, Anthony Myers, being of sound mind. He went through the small bequests first. Donations to the Seattle Children's Hospital. A trust for his housekeeper. The Audi went to his mechanic. Then came the big numbers. The bulk of the estate, Andrew read, including the property holdings, the private equity portfolio, the vintage car collection, appraised at $4.2 million, and the liquid cash reserves, total estimated value, $28,400,000. The room went silent. You could hear Sandra inhale. 28 million. It was more than they imagined. They were thinking maybe 2 or 3 million. But 28? That was never work again money. That was buy a private island money. Sandra grabbed Robert's hand. Caleb was practically drooling. Okay, Nathan said, slamming his hand on the table. Stop right there. 28 million. We want half. We'll settle for 50% right now, and we won't tie this up in court for years. I looked at Nathan. You're negotiating before you hear the beneficiary? We know you manipulated him, Sandra shouted. You turned him against us. You stole him from us just like you stole that scholarship money. I didn't steal anything, I said. I left with trash bags. Remember, we want half, Caleb yelled. I have debts. We have rights. Clause 7, Andrew said, raising his voice over the chaos. Regarding the residuary estate. The room quieted down. I leave 100% of my remaining estate, all assets, real property and intellectual property. Sandra leaned forward, her eyes wide. To my son, Joshua Myers. The silence lasted for 3 seconds. Then the explosion happened. He has no son, Sandra screamed, jumping to her feet. He never married. He's infertile. Everyone knew that. That's a lie. The will is a fake. Nathan pointed a shaking finger at Andrew. This is fraud. You can't just write son in a will if there is no biological relation. We are the blood relatives. Robert is the brother. Caleb is the nephew. Joshua is just a nephew too. They have equal claim. Actually, I said, speaking for the first time in minutes. That's not true. I stood up. I walked over to the window and looked out at the gray sky. You see, Mom, I said, turning back to face her. You made a transaction 15 years ago. You sold me. You thought you were getting rid of a burden. You thought you were smart. I did what I had to do, she cried. I saved the family. No, I said. You saved yourself. And in doing so, you handed me the keys to the kingdom. I nodded at Andrew. Show them. Andrew didn't just hand them a paper. He was theatrical about it. He pressed a button on the table, and the projector screen descended from the ceiling. Exhibit A, Andrew said. The screen lit up. It was a high-resolution scan of a document, yellowed with age, but the signatures were clear in blue ink. Voluntary relinquishment of parental rights. Dated July 15, 2010. Signed, Sandra Myers, Robert Myers. What is this? Caleb squinted at the screen. What does that mean? It means, Andrew explained, his voice icy, that on that rainy night in 2010, your parents didn't just kick Joshua out. They legally terminated their parental rights. They declared, under penalty of perjury, that they no longer wished to be Joshua's parents. They severed the legal bond. So what? Nathan argued, sweating now. That just makes him an emancipated minor. It doesn't make him Anthony's heir over his brother. Wait for it, I said softly. Exhibit B, Andrew said. The slide changed. Decree of Adult Adoption. State of Washington. Dated August 12, 2012. Petitioner, Anthony Raymond Myers. Adoptee Joshua Myers. In 2012, Andrew said, when Joshua turned 18, Anthony Myers legally adopted him. Because Joshua's biological parents had already relinquished their rights. No consent was needed from them. The adoption was finalized. Sealed. Permanent. The room was so quiet you could hear the hum of the projector fan. Joshua is not Anthony's nephew, Andrew clarified, looking directly at Nathan. Legally, biologically, in the eyes of the state, and in every way that matters, Joshua is Anthony's sole surviving child. His son. I watched Sandra's face. It went from red to white to a sickly shade of gray. She slumped back into her chair. Adoption? She whispered. He adopted you? Yes, I said. He wanted a son. You didn't want one. It worked out perfectly. But the money, Caleb stammered. The blood relative rule does not apply, Nathan said, his voice defeated. He closed his briefcase. If he's the legally adopted son, he inherits everything. A brother and a nephew have zero claim against a child. The case is dead. No, Sandra screamed. Primal, guttural scream. It's not fair. We are family. We raised you for 13 years. We fed you. We clothed you. You owe us. I owe you. I laughed. It was a cold, harsh sound. I calculated the cost, actually. I had my accountants run the numbers on what you likely spent on me from birth to age 13. Food, shelter, basics. Adjusted for inflation, it comes to about $120,000. I reached into my suit pocket and pulled out a check. I had written it that morning. But then, I continued, we have to deduct the emotional damages, the therapy bills, the stolen scholarship money, and of course, the $15,000 Anthony paid you. I ripped the check in half. So we're square. You get nothing. Joshua, please. Robert spoke up. His voice was trembling. We're losing the house. Caleb has gambling debts. People are looking for him. They're going to hurt him. Then maybe Caleb should have learned to code. I said. We're your flesh and blood. Sandra wailed. How can you be so cruel? Cruel. I walked over to the table and leaned in, my face inches from hers. Cruel is telling a 13-year-old boy he isn't part of the family because he won't commit fraud. Cruel is putting your child in a garbage bag. This isn't cruelty, Sandra. This is business. And you made a bad deal. I stood up straight and adjusted my cuffs. Get out of my building. You can't do this. Caleb lunged at me. He didn't make it 2 steps. Gabriel, my head of security, stepped out from the shadows near the door. Gabriel is 6 feet 4 inches and former Special Forces. He put a hand on Caleb's chest and shoved him back. Caleb stumbled and fell into his chair. Mr. Myers asked you to leave, Gabriel said. Nathan was already at the door. I'm leaving. I'm not part of this. Retainers canceled. Nathan, come back, Sandra yelled. Mom, we have to go. Caleb whimpered, looking at Gabriel with fear. Sandra looked at me one last time. Her eyes were filled with hate. I wish I had never given birth to you, she spat. Funny, I replied. Anthony thanked you for it every day. They were escorted out. I watched on the security monitor as they stood on the sidewalk, in the rain, arguing. Caleb kicked a trash can. Robert put his head in his hands. Sandra looked up at the building, screaming something the microphone couldn't pick up, but I knew what it was. She was screaming at the unfairness of it all. But it wasn't unfair. It was the only ending that made sense. I turned off the monitor. I looked at Andrew. Did we get it all? Every asset secured, Andrew said, closing the file. The estate is yours, Joshua. Congratulations. I walked over to the window again. The rain was stopping. A break in the clouds let a single beam of sunlight hit the city. I thought about the boy on the curb with the garbage bags. I wished I could go back and tell him, hold on, kid. It's going to be a long ride, but the destination is worth it. I had won. But more importantly, I was free. The door clicked shut behind them, sealing off the noise, the desperation, and the toxicity that had just filled the room. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, vibrating with the energy of a bomb that had just been defused seconds before detonation. I didn't move from the window immediately. I kept my back to the room, watching the rain streak against the glass of the skyscraper. Down on the street, 47 stories below, life was going on. People were rushing to lunch, buses were merging into traffic, and somewhere down there, 3 people were realizing that their entire worldview, the belief that they were owed the world simply for existing, had just shattered. Joshua! Andrew's voice broke the trance. It was soft, lacking his usual legal sharpness. I turned around. The boardroom looked different now. 10 minutes ago, it was a battlefield. Now, it was just a room with expensive furniture. The projector screen was still down, displaying the decree of adult adoption. My name, Anthony's name, bound together by law, stronger than the blood that bound me to the people who had just left. I'm okay, Andrew, I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, calm, but hollow. I'm actually better than okay. Andrew took off his glasses and began polishing them with a silk cloth. You handled that with remarkable restraint. Anthony would have been proud. He probably would have thrown a chair, but he would have been proud. I walked back to the table and looked at the empty chairs where my family had sat. Caleb's chair was pushed back haphazardly. Sandra's water glass was still full, a lipstick stain on the rim. Did we get the restraining orders ready? I asked. Drafted and ready to file. Andrew nodded, tapping a folder. Harassment, attempted extortion, trespassing. Once we file these this afternoon, if they come within 500 feet of you, your home, or this building, they go to jail. No warnings. File them, I said. Today, before they even get back to their motel. Consider it done. Gabriel, my head of security, stepped forward from the corner. He had been a silent sentinel the whole time, a physical reminder that I was protected. They're off the premises, Mr. Myers, Gabriel reported. I had the lobby security escort them to the public sidewalk. The rental company for the Rolls-Royce was waiting for them. It wasn't pretty. The driver took the keys before they could even get back in. They're on foot. On foot in the rain, I murmured. Poetic justice. Do you want me to have a tail on them? Gabriel asked. Just to make sure they leave the city? I thought about it. The old Joshua, the scared 13-year-old, would have wanted to know every move they made. He would have been terrified they were planning a counterattack. But I wasn't that kid anymore. No, I said. Let them go. They don't exist anymore. Watching them just keeps them alive in my head. Gabriel nodded, respecting the decision. I'll be downstairs with the car whenever you're ready. Give me a moment, I said. Gabriel and Andrew left the room, closing the huge oak doors behind them. Finally, I was alone. I sat down in Anthony's chair at the head of the table. The leather was still worn in the shape of him. I placed my hands on the cold mahogany surface. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I expected to feel triumphant. I expected to feel a surge of adrenaline, a desire to pump my fist in the air. I had won. I had destroyed the people who tried to destroy me. I was 28 years old and worth nearly $30 million. But I didn't feel triumph. I felt exhaustion, a deep, bone-weary exhaustion that had nothing to do with sleep. It was the exhaustion of holding up a shield for 15 years. I realized then that hate is heavy. Resentment is heavy. Carrying around the need to prove them wrong had been the fuel for my engine for so long, and now that the engine was off, I could feel the weight of the fuel. I pulled my phone out. I had 3 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. Probably Caleb trying to beg from a burner phone. I blocked the number without listening to the voicemail. Then I opened my photos. I scrolled back past the pictures of the office, past the pictures of the cars, back to a photo from 2012. It was the day the adoption was finalized. Anthony and I were standing on the steps of the courthouse. I was 18, looking awkward in a suit that was slightly too big. Anthony had his arm around my shoulder, a rare display of public affection. He wasn't smiling at the camera. He was looking at me with a look of intense, fierce pride. I remembered what he told me that day. We had gone to a steakhouse to celebrate. You know why I did this, right? He had asked, cutting into a ribeye. Because you hate my parents, I had joked. No, he answered seriously. I don't hate them. I don't care about them enough to hate them. I did this because the world is going to try to tell you who you are, Joshua. They're going to say you're the boy who was thrown away. I did this to give you a piece of paper that says otherwise. You're the boy who was chosen. Chosen. I looked at the empty boardroom. I wasn't the victim in the story anymore. I wasn't even the survivor. I was the architect. I stood up, buttoned my jacket, and walked to the door. I didn't look back at the lipstick stain on the glass or the pushed-back chairs. That room was the past. I was walking into the future. I took the private elevator down to the garage. Gabriel was waiting by the Porsche 911 Turbo S. Anthony's car, now mine. You driving, boss? Gabriel asked. Yeah, I said. I need to drive. I'll follow in the SUV. I slid into the driver's seat. The smell of the leather was the same as it was that night in 2010. But this time I wasn't shivering. I wasn't holding a garbage bag. I gripped the steering wheel. I drove out of the garage and into the Seattle drizzle. The city looked different, sharper, brighter. I didn't go home. I found myself driving south. I didn't plan it, but my subconscious was steering. I drove for 3 hours, down I-5, crossing the bridge into Portland. I needed to see it. One last time. I pulled up to the house in southeast Portland. It looked smaller than I remembered. The paint was peeling. The yard was overgrown. Dad had stopped caring, clearly. The basketball hoop in the driveway, the one Caleb used to practice on while I did homework, was rusted and netless. It was just a house. It wasn't a monster. It wasn't a prison. It was just a collection of wood and drywall where some unhappy people lived. I saw a light on in the living room. They must have just gotten back. Maybe took a bus. I could imagine the screaming match happening inside. Sandra blaming Robert. Caleb blaming the world. I felt a vibration in my pocket. I looked at my phone. It was a notification from my bank app. Deposit received. $1,200. Dividend payout. I made more money in the 10 seconds I sat there than they had likely scraped together in a month. And yet, looking at that house, I felt a pang of pity. Not regret. Pity. They were trapped in there. Trapped in their own mediocrity, their own bitterness, their own inability to take responsibility for their lives. They were serving a life sentence in a prison of their own making. I put the Porsche in gear. The engine roared, a deep, guttural sound that shook the quiet neighborhood. I saw the curtain twitch in the front window. Someone was looking out. I didn't wave. I didn't rev the engine to show off. I just eased off the clutch and drove away. As I hit the highway, heading back north toward Seattle, toward my home, toward my company, I felt something physically shift in my chest. A knot that had been tied tight for 15 years suddenly loosened. I wasn't running away from them anymore. I was simply moving on. That night I slept for 12 hours. No dreams. Just peace. 6 months later, the autumn sun was golden over the University of Washington campus. The leaves were turning brilliant shades of crimson and burnt orange, crunching under the feet of students rushing to class. I stood at the podium in the main auditorium of the business school. The room was packed. 500 students, faculty, and press. Behind me, a massive banner hung from the ceiling. The Anthony Myers Scholarship Foundation. My uncle, I said into the microphone, my voice echoing slightly, was a man who believed in leverage. In finance, leverage is using borrowed capital for an investment, expecting the profits made to be greater than the interest payable. But in life, leverage is something else. I looked out at the sea of faces. I saw hunger in some of them, fear in others. I saw myself. Leverage is having someone believe in you when you have zero assets to your name. I continued. 15 years ago, I had a net worth of 2 garbage bags of old clothes and a broken laptop. I was statistically probable to fail. I was a throwaway kid. The room was dead silent. I had never told this story publicly before. But one person provided the leverage, I said. He gave me a home. He gave me an education. But most importantly, he gave me the permission to be great. He taught me that family isn't about whose DNA you share. It's about who stands beside you in the trenches. I paused, making eye contact with a kid in the front row. He was wearing a suit that was clearly from a thrift store, and he was clutching a notebook like it was a life raft. Today, we are launching the Anthony Myers Initiative. We are fully funding 50 scholarships this year. Not for the kids with the 4.0 GPAs who have tutors and private coaches. We are looking for the fighters. The kids who work the night shift to help their parents pay rent. The kids who study on the bus because it's too loud at home. The kids who have been told no by everyone else. I smiled. We are looking for the ones who are ready to build their own empires. The applause was deafening. It washed over me, not as validation for my ego, but as validation for Anthony's memory. After the speech, there was a reception. I shook hands, took photos, smiled until my face hurt. Mr. Myers? I turned. It was the kid from the front row. Up close, he looked even younger. He was skinny, with messy hair and glasses that were taped at the hinge. I'm Leo, he said, his voice shaking. Leo Katsuros. Nice to meet you, Leo, I said, shaking his hand. Good grip. I just wanted to say thank you, he stammered. I read about your story, in the brochure. About your laptop. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a laptop. It was held together with duct tape. My stepdad smashed mine last week, Leo said quietly. He said coding is a waste of time. He wants me to work at his auto shop. I froze. It was like looking into a mirror that reflected 15 years into the past. The pain was sharp, immediate, and visceral. Let me see that, I said. He handed me the laptop. It was heavy, old. What are you working on? I asked. I'm building an app, he said, his eyes lighting up. It helps coordinate food waste from restaurants to local shelters. Logistics stuff. Logistics, I smiled. I love logistics. I handed the laptop back to him. Then, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my business card. I wrote a number on the back. Not the office line. My direct line. Leo, you applied for the scholarship? Yes, sir. But my grades aren't perfect. It's hard to study when... I know. I cut him off. I know exactly how hard it is. I looked at Sarah, my assistant, who was standing nearby. Sarah, flag Leo Katsaros' application. He's approved. Full ride. Plus the technology stipend. Leo dropped his laptop. What? You're not working at the auto shop, Leo? I said, leaning in. You're going to college. And get a new laptop. You can't build an empire with duct tape. The kid started to cry. He tried to hide it, wiping his eyes furiously. Don't hide it, I told him, repeating Anthony's words to me. It's fuel. Use it. I walked away before I could get emotional myself. That was the victory. That was the real inheritance. Not the Ferrari. Not the penthouse. It was the ability to reach down into the pit I had climbed out of and pull someone else up. Later that afternoon, as the sun began to set, turning the sky into a bruising mix of purple and gold, I drove to the cemetery. Lakeview Cemetery is peaceful. It overlooks the water. Anthony's grave was simple. Black granite. Anthony Raymond Myers, 1965 to 2025 father. Mentor. Builder. I had added the word father. It wasn't on his birth certificate, but it was the truest thing about him. I sat on the stone bench next to the grave. I didn't bring flowers. Anthony hated cut flowers. He said they were a bad investment because they depreciated instantly. I brought a bottle of Macallan 25, his favorite scotch, and 2 glasses. I poured a splash into one glass and set it on the headstone. I poured a splash for myself. We did it, Anthony, I said to the wind. The scholarship fund is live. We're going to save a lot of kids. The wind rustled the leaves of the maple tree above me. The family came by the way, I said, taking a sip. Well, they tried. Sandra sent a letter to the office last month. Andrew intercepted it. Apparently Caleb is in jail. Fraud. Something about fake checks. And Robert had a stroke. He's in a state-run facility now. I swirled the amber liquid in the glass. I paid for his facility, I admitted to the grave. Anonymously. Not the best one, but a decent one. He won't know it was me. Sandra thinks the state is covering it. I didn't do it for him. I did it because I'm not them. And because you taught me that having power means you can choose to be kind, even when they don't deserve it. I sat there for a long time, watching the sun dip below the Olympic Mountains. I thought about the concept of abandonment. For years, I defined myself by who had left me. I was the abandoned child. I was the unwanted one. But sitting there, next to the man who chose me, I realized that abandonment was just the clearing of the brush. You have to clear the weeds before you can build the foundation. My parents didn't abandon me. They released me. They let me go so I could find the person I was supposed to be. I finished the scotch. I poured Anthony's glass onto the grass. To the future, I said. I walked back to the car. The Porsche gleamed in the twilight. I got in and started the engine. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Leo. Mr. Myers, I just told my mom. She's crying. She says thank you. I promise I won't let you down. I typed back, I know you won't. See you in class. I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. I merged onto the highway, heading back toward the city skyline that glittered like a pile of diamonds against the dark water. I am Joshua Myers. I was born in a house of scarcity, but I live in a house of abundance. I was thrown out like trash, but I built a legacy of gold. And as the city lights blurred into streaks of light around me, I knew one thing for certain. The best revenge isn't anger. It isn't even success. The best revenge is being happy. And for the first time in 28 years, I was truly deeply happy. Educational conclusion and call to action. This story might sound extreme, but the core of it is something many of us face. Conditional worth. For the first 13 years of my life, I was taught that I only mattered if I was useful, and even then, I mattered less than someone else. My mother's indifference and my father's silence felt like proof that I was broken. But here is the lesson I want you to take away today. You do not need anyone's permission to know your worth. What saved me wasn't Uncle Anthony's money. It was his acceptance. But even before that, it was my own refusal to participate in my own destruction. When I refused to give up that scholarship, I was setting a boundary. I was saying, my future is more important than your comfort. Boundaries with family are the hardest ones to set. We are taught that blood is thicker than water. But sometimes, blood is just a biological accident. Family are the people who nurture you, who protect you, and who want you to win. If the people in your house don't do that, you have every right to find a new family. Forgiveness is something you do for yourself to release the poison. Reconciliation is something you do with others, if they have changed. You can forgive without reconciling. You can wish them well from a distance without letting them back in to burn your house down again. Your story is yours to write. Don't let anyone else hold the pen. This is the moment that changed everything for me, when I realized I wasn't the victim, but the architect of my own life. Thank you so much for walking this path with me. You guys are incredible. I want to hear from you. Type good in the comments below if you agree that we have the right to choose our own family. Or, tell me, have you ever had to set a hard boundary with a family member to save yourself? Let's talk about it. Your interaction helps this story reach more people who might need to hear that it's okay to walk away. Hit that like button, subscribe for more stories of justice and resilience, and remember, the best revenge is a life well lived.